I was a male concubine in ancient Greece. It was pure humiliation. Everyone loves talking about ancient Greece like it was some golden age of civilization. Philosophy, democracy, the Olympics, beautiful art and architecture, Socrates asking questions, Plato writing about ideal societies, the birthplace of Western thought. What they don't talk about is what happened to boys like me. I wasn't a philosopher. I wasn't a citizen debating politics in the agora. I wasn't an athlete training for the games. I was property. I was a slave kept specifically for one purpose, the sexual pleasure of wealthy Greek men. And before you think this was some romanticized thing, some beautiful mentorship like history books sometimes suggest, let me be clear, it wasn't. It was humiliating, degrading, and completely inescapable. Let me tell you what it was really like to be a male concubine in ancient Greece. How I ended up here. I didn't choose this. Nobody chooses to be a sex slave. I was born into slavery. My mother was a slave, which meant I was automatically a slave too. That's how it worked. Your status was inherited. If your mother was property, you were property. No exceptions, no way out. Some male concubines were war captives, boys taken when their cities were conquered and sold at slave markets. Others were free, born children from families so poor they sold their own sons just to survive. Imagine your parents being so desperate they'd rather sell you into sexual slavery than watch you starve. Greek men had very specific preferences when it came to male concubines. They wanted young boys, usually between 12 and 18. Before you'd fully matured, before you grow a beard, while you still had that smooth, youthful appearance that Greek culture was obsessed with. If you were an attractive slave boy, your owner would recognize your value and train you for this role, or you'd be sold specifically to someone looking for a concubine. Either way, once you were designated for this purpose, that was your life. Your entire existence centered around being sexually available. The lie about pederasty. Here's where we need to talk about something that makes modern people really uncomfortable. Ancient Greek society had this practice called pederasty. It was a relationship between an adult man and an adolescent boy. The way it's sometimes taught in history classes, this was an educational thing. The older man, the Erastes, would mentor the younger boy, the Erogenus. He'd teach him about politics, philosophy, athletics, how to be a good Greek citizen. And yes, there was a sexual component, but it was supposedly respectful, supposedly based on mutual affection. That's the sanitized version they teach you. The reality for someone like me was completely different. I wasn't some beloved student being gently mentored by a wise teacher. I was a slave. I was property whose purpose was sexual gratification. There was no mentorship, no education. No path to citizenship or respect, just use. Free-born boys might get poetry and courtship and philosophical discussions. I got commands. I got expectations. I got punished if I didn't perform enthusiastically enough. What my days actually looked like. My entire life revolved around being available. That's it. That's what I was for. I was kept in my owner's household in decent condition because my appearance mattered. I needed to stay attractive, healthy looking, desirable. So I was fed adequately, given a place to sleep, kept clean. But I was expected to maintain a very specific look. Smooth skin everywhere. Well-groomed hair. Fit but not too muscular because Greek aesthetics preferred a lean, almost feminine build for young males. This meant constant maintenance, regular bathing, oiling my skin, removing all body hair using methods that were painful and left me raw, keeping myself presentable every single day because I never knew when I'd be needed. The sexual acts I was expected to perform weren't optional. Greek society had rigid ideas about sexual roles. The penetrative partner was dominant, masculine, and powerful. The receptive partner was submissive, feminine, lesser. As a concubine, I was always in the receptive role. Always submissive, always on the receiving end. That was my function. That's what I existed for. And it wasn't just my owner who used me. Greek men had these drinking parties called symposiums where elite men would gather to drink wine, discuss philosophy and politics, recite poetry, and enjoy entertainment. I was the entertainment. I'd be brought out and presented to guests, passed around, used by multiple men in one evening while they laughed and talked and drank. I was decoration and a party favor and a sexual object all at once. They'd discuss Plato's theories about ideal forms while using my body, then go back to debating as if I wasn't even there. The physical toll was constant. I was experiencing repeated sexual trauma with no recovery time. Injuries were common. Pain was just part of life. And there was no medical care that addressed the real problem, because the problem was the entire situation and nobody saw anything wrong with it. The humiliation was the point. The worst part wasn't even the physical pain. It was the humiliation. I was always aware that I was less than human in their eyes. My owner might desire me sexually, might even show me occasional kindness, but he didn't respect me. His guests didn't respect me. Nobody respected me. Free Greek men would write beautiful poetry about the young men they courted. They'd talk about love and desire, and the beauty of the male form. They'd philosophize about the nature of attraction and relationships. Then they'd use me without a second thought and feel absolutely nothing about it. I couldn't have a real relationship. I couldn't love anyone freely. How could I? Any connection I tried to form happened in the shadow of my status as a sex slave. Who would want that? Who would choose to be close to someone with no freedom, no future, no hope? Even among other slaves, I was marked. The sexual nature of my slavery made me contaminated in their eyes, tainted. Other slaves looked down on me because at least their slavery was labor, not this. No escape, no future. Some slaves in ancient Greece could hope for freedom eventually. They might be freed in their owner's will. They might save money and buy their freedom. They might earn it as a reward for loyal service. Male concubines rarely got freed. We were too valuable. As long as I maintained my youthful appearance, I was generating pleasure for my owner. Why would he give that up? And even if I somehow gained freedom, what then? I'd spent my formative years as a sexual slave. I had no skills beyond what I'd been forced to do. No education, no training in any trade, no connections among free men who respected me. Former concubines who gained freedom usually ended up as prostitutes because what other options were there? At least as a prostitute, I'd have some choices about clients, some ability to refuse, some control over my own body, but I'd still be selling the only thing I'd been trained to provide. As I got older, as I started losing that youthful appearance that made me valuable, my situation would only get worse. Older concubines got sold to brothels, to lower-class owners who couldn't afford younger slaves. Or they'd just be discarded, left to survive however they could. There was no good ending to this story. There was just survival until I couldn't anymore. The psychological damage nobody talked about. The Greeks didn't have words for trauma or PTSD or sexual abuse. Those concepts didn't exist in their framework for understanding the world. But that doesn't mean I wasn't experiencing them. I was being raped. Repeatedly. Daily. That's what this was, even though ancient Greeks didn't use that word for what happened to slaves. In their legal system, rape was a property crime against a free man whose wife or son was violated. I was property myself, so what happened to me wasn't legally rape. It was just use. I had no autonomy over my own body, no ability to say no, no escape from constant violation. This breaks people. Some concubines found ways to cope by emotionally detaching, mentally separating themselves from what was happening to their bodies, going through the motions while retreating somewhere deep inside where they couldn't be touched. But that only works for so long. Depression was common, though the Greeks didn't have that word either. Living in constant despair with no hope of things ever getting better. Suicide was common among slaves generally and concubines particularly. Drowning in the sea. Hanging, poison if you could get access to it. Any escape from a life that had become unbearable. The civilization that history celebrates. Here's what really gets me. Ancient Greece produced incredible philosophy. They developed democracy. They created beautiful art and architecture. They wrote plays that are still performed today. They made mathematical and scientific discoveries that advanced human knowledge. And they did it all in a society that thought owning human beings for sex was perfectly acceptable. The same men who sat around discussing Socratic wisdom about virtue and knowledge would use me without hesitation. They'd debate the nature of justice and then treat me as if I had no rights whatsoever. They'd create gorgeous sculptures celebrating the ideal male form while reducing actual males like me to objects. My suffering didn't make it into any of their philosophical texts. None of the great thinkers wrote about the immorality of sexual slavery. The playwrights didn't create tragedies about boys like me. The poets didn't compose verses about our pain. We were just there in the background, being used and broken and forgotten. What it really was. Being a male concubine in ancient Greece meant living as sexual property with no rights, no dignity, and no hope. It meant experiencing repeated rape and humiliation while society viewed it as normal. It meant having your childhood stolen and turned into a nightmare. It meant whatever potential you had as a person was crushed under the weight of being reduced to a body for others to use. The Greeks talk about their civilization being advanced. They weren't advanced enough to see us as human. I existed for someone else's pleasure. I was used and discarded. And when I'm gone, nobody will remember my name or care that I suffered. I'll just be another forgotten slave in a civilization that history celebrates. That was my life as a male concubine in ancient Greece. Pure humiliation from start to finish.